It's the Brad and John Show.
And today's date is May 21st. This is the B block, which means we start at about 7:20. The reason I do that is because we have a lot of listeners listen to the show live, and this is broadcast live on 104.5 KSOQ, a.k.a. Westplex Talk. But we have a lot of people listen to the show either on our podcast or on the YouTube version. And I think it helps to know if you're listening to something in the future as to the certain date we gave it. Right, John?
You're exactly right. And we are a radio show, right, Brad?
Yes, you got that. Okay. Interesting articles. Let's go back to last Friday. City of St. Louis. Tornado comes in. Nobody fires off the tornado sirens. Have you seen the latest story about there's actually a name behind the person who has essentially been giving some time off without pay? Have you seen the story yet?
Yeah, I saw that. And are they a they, them? Are they a non-binary, or is it a woman?
You've seen the picture, right?
Yeah. I'm not trying to be funny, but I don't know the human's name. Is it a woman?
I don't know. And I don't, you can't even say anymore. You can't make comments like that. The story has been essentially proven, or the facts are out, that the members of the SEMA or the KEMA, is that City Emergency Management Authority? Is that what SEMA or KEMA stands for?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm bringing up the story right now.
Okay. They're at a workshop, okay, and they're off-site. Now, first off, I have so many problems with this crazy, weird story. And if you don't know what we're talking about, the tornado comes into St. Louis, kills 5 people, does, now they're saying, $1 billion damage in the city of St. Louis, and which is interesting because I have friends of mine from around the country who've contacted, are you okay? And then we get talking about the storm, and I say, what's interesting about this is rarely, I don't know if this is because of heat dome or if, somebody like a meteorologist or Dave Murray could explain this, but rarely do storms hit or tornadoes hit the city of St. Louis. It's usually one of the collar counties. It's usually over in Illinois, St. Louis County, but rarely St. Louis City. You agree with me, John? It just doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right, Brad. It would seem to follow up like the I-44 corridor usually, or hit the county areas, but not St. Louis City.
Yes, almost all I can think back like in the last 20, 30 years. And now if you go way back, if you go back to the old days of the Checker Dome, the arena, and I can remember as a kid, and John, you probably wouldn't experience this, but the arena, the Checker Dome, place where the Blues used to play and all the big concerts were right there in Oakland Avenue, used to be, or was hit by a tornado. As a matter of fact, the Channel 2 tower, when Channel 2 was right next to it, which is now where the Mercedes-Benz dealership is, that used to be their tall tower for their transmitter, and the top of the tower was ripped off. And if you remember, they'd just seen like the base of that tower for a long time, and there was nothing on the top of it. That was because that tornado hit that. But that's the last time I can remember a tornado hitting St. Louis. Oh, the city.
Yeah, I remember that, Brad.
The city proper. Okay. So the article goes into depth about they're at a conference, and now there's all this contradicting information about, well, was there a plan? And then it comes out that there is a button. They keep talking about a button. There's a button that's at the police or at the fire dispatching center, but the button at the fire dispatching center didn't work. Is that what you got from the article? Did you read that far into it?
Yeah. And by the way, to correct myself, there it is a woman apparently, and her name is Sarah Russell. And the line in the Post-Dispatch says, Russell contacted the fire department to sound the sirens.
Right.
At that point, there was a breakdown in communication. The directive to activate the sirens was ambiguous, which cannot happen when a tornado is sweeping through our city. So there was the breakdown, I guess, between Russell and the fire department.
Now, I'm not 100% sure of this. This has just been in the news recently, and I know you don't cover much city politics, but for a long time, there have been separate dispatchers for the city fire and ambulance and the city police. And one of the controversies recently has been there is going to be a new dispatching center built, which will bring all the dispatchers under one roof and actually cross-train the dispatchers, so you won't have separate dispatchers for fire and ambulance and separate dispatchers for the city police. But remember, this was an article last week where there's a sign up someplace that says, Home of the Future 911 Dispatching Center. And it's been there for like 2 years. Isn't that another one of these goofy stories in the city that they have this?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds familiar, Brad.
Okay, so why is it that there's only so many buttons? I mean, in an era of communication, in an era of smartphones and everything else where I can grab my phone and I can check into my transmitter sites. I can turn transmitters on and off remotely. I can adjust the thermostat for the HVAC units at my house, at my office, at all sorts of kind of places. How come there's not an app where anybody from the city can say, oh my God, there's a tornado. I'm going to hit the button on my phone. Get what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. I mean, I think it would underscore the idea that government technology is always behind private sector technology. So you're not going to have something as advanced as a Nest system that people had 10 years ago on their phone working in St. Louis City.
Exactly what you're saying. Give some computer programmer $100 and a couple free pizzas and say, okay, can you put together a little program for us so that if we're not in the SEMA office, we can still fire off the tornado warning system? Oh yeah, no problem. And not only that, automate it, because of the fact that this is sort of Nerdville, John, but the way the EAS system works that we have is that there are these codes for each individual area, okay? And they are warnings and watches and things like that. This is a system that's been in effect for decades, and it's the backbone of the EAS system, that when you hear your radio station, on this radio station, if there's a tornado warning, the system automatically kicks in. We've had that for years and years and years. And it's all done with these codes. And it's very simple, to the point where I could buy the city of St. Louis. I can go on one of the websites. I can tell you exactly the name of the company called Sage, which is one of the companies that manufactures the things in the broadcasting business. You could put this thing in a rack, power it up. It's got a little printer on it. It's got all sorts of different outputs on it, and it's got relay closures. So in other words, if a particular code is fired off by the National Weather Service that there's a tornado warning for the city and county of St. Louis, on the back of the unit, a switch closes, which could be attached to the tornado warning button in the city of St. Louis, and it would all be automatic. And that would cost $3,000. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand this. I mean, to me, there's now the interesting part of this is this woman, what's her name again?
Sarah Russell.
They're not saying she's the one that screwed up, but they put her on administrative leave. Doesn't that sort of give you?
Yeah, it's paid administrative leave. So she gets to stay home and do laundry and take naps and still be paid.
You know, I've never understood that. I've never understood if you get...
Well, I mean, I think it's, not to interrupt, Brad, but I think it's, if you're investigating somebody and you want to say, hey, they're kind of in trouble, but kind of not, I think it would be unfair to not pay them while you're looking into whether they dropped the ball or somebody at the fire department. And I saw on social media this morning what looked to be an official transcript. I don't know if it's true or not. And you know how I am when I see stuff on social media. I don't believe any of it. But it appeared as though there is a transcript of the conversation between Russell and somebody at the fire department, dispatch or whatever, where a conversation ends and Russell says something to the effect of, you guys got the sirens. And somebody at the fire department says something to the effect of, oh, here it is. The quote is, you got the sirens. And the fire department employee says, yes, ma'am. And then Russell responds, all right, thank you so much. So reading that, Brad, depending on what you mean by you got the sirens, it would seem as though Russell did her job. But that's in the Post-Dispatch story.
Well, but then they come out and say the reason that the sirens didn't go off because the fire department's button didn't work. That was the whole...
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So it was a technical malfunction and not because somebody didn't at least try to do their job.
But now they're saying, and I read part of that article as well too, now they're saying that the buttons at the SEMA headquarters, wherever that is, KEMA, CEMA, and they're now going to have a full-time fire department official at the SEMA headquarters just to push the button if they need to push the button.
Oh, that's good. Now, hopefully they'll be performing other tasks. Well, now, do you think, Brad, based on the fact that you've seen a lot of city employees, do you think the city employees were maybe just eating donuts over the button and the button got stuck?
John, this whole thing, see, this is why government is very frustrating to me. I mean, government is very frustrating to me. I go back to and I've told you the crazy stupid story, the crazy weird story you like, that years ago when I'm in line and I'm trying to pay my personal property taxes in St. Charles County. Remember this story? Have I ever told you this story before?
I do. I remember it well.
Okay, I'm standing in line, and the two cashiers, they're talking back and forth, and they're talking, the one woman is talking about how she had a terrible experience at a restaurant the other night, and the waiter was terrible, and the food was bad, and blah, 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 blah. And the one woman says to the other, well, you should have gone to the manager and told them to fire that person. So I get up.
And what did you do, Brad? You went right up there, and what did you say?
I get up to the window and I go, hey, I'm having a bad experience here at paying my taxes. Can I talk to the manager and can she fire one of you two? And the one lady, she says, we're government employees. You can't fire us. I'm going like, okay, I get it. It's okay for them to complain about other people when they don't get the service they deserve. But when they're giving out poor service, they can't be fired. They're the untouchables, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
I get that. Now, here's the question. I don't know if anybody has asked this, Brad, but I do think it's probably relevant in some way. Does anybody think that the sirens going off, the sirens not going off in some areas led to people dying?
Well, I don't, that's an interesting question because, John, when the sirens go off at your place, do you hunker down in the basement?
I go directly out my back door to watch the tornado.
Right. It's funny because they say, well, that's what St. Louisans do. If you live in the St. Louis area, when the sirens go off, you go outside and take a look where the storm's at.
And I'll just say here, when kids are here, we're all in the basement, right? If there's not kids at my house, I go directly outside to watch the tornado.
Well, but that's the parenting instinct. The parenting instinct is that it's not you, it's your kids you're protecting. And John, I commend you for that. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it was the same thing when my kids were younger too. But now that my kids are grown and they're adults,
you don't have to pretend. Right. I don't want my kids seeing me outside watching the tornado because I don't want them emulating that.
Right.
That disaster reaction.
Right. It's the whole thing. But
the question is, if you had, and I don't mean to be condescending here, but I know that there are people that aren't perpetually on Boomer Facebook or on X or on Instagram that might not have known last week that storms were coming. But I think anybody that had conversations with neighbors or watched any sort of media knew that storms were coming and it was going to be really bad on Friday. So to blame the deaths or destruction or whatever on the fact that some tornado sirens in some areas didn't go off, I think that's unfair.
Well, John, let's take it one step further. It's spring in the St. Louis area. Get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying, Brad. We had storms in March. We had them in April. Right. We had them in May.
Right. It's to the point where it's like, okay, this is what happens. This is what happens in the St. Louis area. We are in Tornado Alley. The storms come up 44, and ironically, this one did not, but most of the time the storms come up 44. Everybody has radar on their phone now. You can look at it. You can say, oh my God, it's coming. Look at this storm. It's purple.
Yeah,
that's not good.
You're exactly right, Brad.
It's coming right up. But this one was a supercell that essentially developed very quickly. And to answer your question, do you think that this could have saved people? Yeah, some people it could have. The poor lady who was killed in the church when the bell tower collapsed on her. Yeah, she could have gone to the basement or something like that. But you know what? It's coulda, shoulda, woulda. You don't know. But yet, if we have these systems in place and the government gives us this false sense of security by saying, hey, we're the government and we've got these tornado warning sirens, and when we turn them on, you should seek cover. How many of them go like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm watching what's on it. I'm watching my soap opera, or I'm watching ESPN, or I'm watching whatever. I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm not going down to the basement. Now, once again, there's some people that don't have basements. I have friends of mine that live in other parts of the country, and
Arkansas and Texas, Oklahoma, they don't have basements.
Well, there's a lot of folks that have had houses built in that southwest corner of Missouri in the Joplin area that now have, part of their new construction. I don't know if it's mandated or not. They have essentially storm shelters. They have safe rooms or something like that. It's almost like a tank that they can crawl into or something like that. That if a tree fell on the place, it wouldn't necessarily hurt them. But I don't know. The whole thing is. I guess what comes down to the fact that this is Another strike against the city of St. Louis. As if they don't have enough problems. People are now going like, okay, police protection sucks, crime's terrible, school sucks. They can't even fire off the tornado sirens. Get what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying.
And to the point where I heard a guy the other day, I don't know if I talked to you about this on the air or not. Sometimes I forget what you and I talk about. I heard a guy the other day saying there's a number, and this is, did I tell you this 250,000 number this guy was talking about?
No, about what?
He said that when the city of St. Louis hits 250,000, that'll be the panic point. That we already have a story that was last week that the mid-decade Census Bureau came out with a report that St. Louis by per capita is the number one loser as far as population, the city of St. Louis, in the entire country. And this guy was saying that the floor is going to be 250,000. When it hits 250,000, that's going to be, all of a sudden, everything's going to change. People are going to go, oh my God, we're down to 250,000 people. And keep in mind, at one point in time in the history of St. Louis, about 50, 60 years ago, the city of St. Louis was pushing close to 1 million people, just in the city. I don't think it ever hit 1 million, but I think it was like in the 900,000s, okay? It's lost, if let's say for the sake of argument, it was 900,000. We're down to 300,000. They've lost 2/3 of the population of the city of St. Louis. Now, the sad part of that is that it's not like we're Austin or Dallas or Houston where the whole metro area is just exploding. It's just everybody's moving around. The St. Louis metro has been, a 2.5 million metro for I don't know how many decades. And it's not because of the fact that, and keep in mind, if I go back through these demographic numbers, St. Charles County 50 years ago had 50,000 people in it, 60,000 people? I'll pull the numbers in the break.
Something like that.
Now it's got close to 450,000 people, okay? People are just moving around, and you and I being North County boys, see, once again, I was in North County the other night again. I'm driving through.
Did you pay for premium weed or did you get like ditch weed? Or did Lamont have a brand new lawnmower that he would only sell you after dark when you couldn't really examine the blades?
If I told you why I was there, you wouldn't believe me.
No, I would totally believe why you were there, Brad.
But see, I can drive in the city, doesn't bother me. I drive through East St. Louis, doesn't bother me.
I know. You're a tough guy, Brad. You're the guy that's going to go 30 miles to save $10 on a lawnmower. You're not scared.
And do I have a death wish, John, according to you?
You do? Yeah, you do have a death wish, Brad. I think that you've realized that you've lived a long and prosperous life and touched a lot of people in meaningful ways. And so if you want to go up to Jennings and take some guy's word that the John Deere actually works and he didn't just steal it from somebody's garage that died, you're willing to roll the dice.
And you know what? Life's full of choices, right? Choices. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, right? Okay, we have to predict. Let me try to get my mouth working. We have to take a break.